long before Freddy and Jason swung blades at each other, and long before the Alien and the Predator duked it out, and way long before all your favorite Marvel characters would show up in each other's movies, there was Frankenstein meeting the Wolfman, which is a classic crossover film of two huge Universal monster franchises coming together, and it really kind of paved the way for these types of films, the first of its kind, really. And it's not to say that it doesn't have its problems. Like, this is a direct sequel to The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr., so you gotta think there's this new series. Okay, the Wolfman series. We've only had one entry in this series, and then the next movie we do is a crossover movie? What? And not only that, we've had the Frankenstein movies before with Boris Karloff, but we have someone else playing it in this role, the Frankenstein monster. We have Bela Lugosi. And it's like, really? Bela Lugosi? He's already been one of these types of characters before. He already played Dracula, in, of course, the infamous Dracula film. So what the hell's going on here? And things like that. So it doesn't quite make sense. Well, whatever. But it really does pave the way for a lot of these franchise crossover movies. And I think what it does so successfully in that is that it really does feel consistent with how these movies are, how they should be, right from the get-go. I mean, The Wolfman and Frankenstein, both being fairly similar. I mean, they're both Universal monster pictures, and they both have a similar kind of sense of dread and of a gloomy, dark nature to them, and they have the German expressionist angles and set design and all that great horror kind of stuff from this era. So, I mean, naturally they'd be a good fit. And whether it was kind of this idea of, well, let's just do this gimmicky kind of thing. We'll have our viewers go on the Universal Pictures website and vote for who they think they want to win, the Wolfman or Frankenstein, and we'll have a good marketing campaign. No, I mean, obviously, internet wasn't around at the time, but it was a way to tell the story, to keep this kind of universe going and intermingling and interconnecting in a way that made narrative sense. And that made tonal sense, which is done well throughout all these movies. And House of Frankenstein as well, bringing all these characters together. And I think it does a good, if not flimsy, job of getting these characters together. Obviously, we have Lon Chaney Jr. back as Lawrence Talbot, who is cursed by the wolf. He's a wolfman by night. He was thought to be dead for 4 years, but guess what? He's not. He cannot die. He's some kind of Superman or something, and he's always turning to this wolf. And like any normal kind of person would feel, he's terrified by this. He's like, I'm killing people. I gotta die. I gotta get rid of this curse. So basically what he wants to do is find a way, find some kind of piece of the puzzle to bring him to rest once and for all and be done with this curse. And that's really what it's all about. And he enlists the aid of the wise gypsy from the first film, who's like, oh yes, I know about the work of this Frankenstein guy who brought unnatural life from death. So in kind of an opposite way, I suppose he could bring death from unnatural life, couldn't he? Doesn't that make kind of sense, sort of? He's like, okay, I'll go with it. I have nothing else to lose. So, get on the wagon and travel to, not Transylvania, not some German town, some made-up town. I forget what it is, but it's Germany, basically. And they search down Frankenstein's work. He kind of tries to convince his daughter, like, hey, do you have his writings? I really need your help here. And he unearths the Frankenstein monster, who prior to that has been frozen in ice. It's not only a direct sequel to The Wolfman, but also to Ghost of Frankenstein, so it picks up the Frankenstein story from there. This would be, I guess, the 5th Frankenstein film in total at this point. So it all kind of comes together with the doctor who's helping him in his research, Frankenstein's daughter, Lawrence Talbot. They're all trying to figure out a way to help things. But meanwhile, the monster's starting to run amok. Town, as they often do in these movies, they're in an uproar, and they want to kill the monster, and they hate the Frankenstein family, and they want just peace once and for all. Gosh, come on. And, Lawrence Talbot feels the same, and he wants to do anything he can do to help the situation. So it's all about that, and of course, what it all amounts to is a final brawl, a beat-em-up between Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman. And it's not bad. I mean, like, by today's standards, it's nothing particularly impressive. We see them wailing at each other a little bit, throwing punches, tumbling around and all that kind of stuff. And it's pretty good. I think it's satisfying just based on seeing these two iconic movie monsters sharing the screen alone, I think it's cool. But you kind of think like if it were made today, it would be like huge budget. They'd be like crashing through walls of buildings and explosions and grabbing each other by the legs and throwing them across rooms and stuff like that. It's not quite that elaborate, but it gets the job done. And I think, as always with these movies, the effects, even for at the time, are very good. And the Wolfman makeup, I think, looks even better than it did in the previous movie. Maybe the Frankenstein makeup doesn't look quite as good as it did in the previous movies. Maybe in part due to Bela Lugosi's performance. It's hard to say because this movie was altered a little bit from its original conception in that the original kind of pitch to this film, Frankenstein's monster, had dialogue, and because of his in the previous movie his brain is switched with Igor, who is also played by Bela Lugosi, so I don't know, but he's blind and he's kind of feeling around, like the typical kind of Frankenstein stereotype that we kind of know today, like the arms are going, "Rrr, rrr," things like that. So while he did have dialogue in this film, it was all cut out, save for maybe a few grunts and things like that. It's kind of ironic because in the previous movie, like I talked about that Son of Frankenstein previously, they were so generous to Lugosi with the screen time that Igor got. So to kind of butcher him up a little bit, kind of an unfair rap, I think they gave him, maybe a little bit. But ultimately, it's about these two monsters and how can we share the screen with them, and it gets the job done in that sense. And I think it's very satisfying, and it is a classic. This is the movie. This is kind of what made the world realize this could work. We could bring these big franchises together. So now we see it almost all the time. We're seeing it now more than ever, actually. So I really would like to see Universal go in a similar direction. Like, I think they're trying that now. Like, they're kind of trying to go for like a modern Universal monsters crossover kind of thing. I think they had Dracula Untold, which is supposed to be like the start of that. So I guess that's like the Iron Man of the new Universal's monsters cinematic universe or so. But what they really should do, they should go for like almost like straight remakes of these stories, but just enhance them a little bit. Keep the same designs. We don't need to see Dracula be this sexy shirtless guy. He works as kind of the Bela Lugosi version of it, and I love seeing the flat top bolt in the neck Frankenstein monster like we've seen in these movies. So just keep to kind of that original thing if they're going to do that. But as it stands, you don't really need anything new because these older ones, they certainly hold up spectacularly, actually. So if you have not seen Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, I highly recommend checking it out. Horror classic. You can't really beat the two Universal head honchos going head to head. So that's my review. What do you think of it, Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman? Comment below. Let me know. Be sure to comment, rate, subscribe, all that good stuff. Visit Dare237.com. Until next time, I'll see you later, and stay scared.